The Norwegian maritime cluster has always been a pioneer in this regard, with LNG, battery propulsion, and hydrogen having been piloted at local shores.
AOS Offshore is committed to providing customers with the latest ROV and subsea robotics technology in a compact and portable system that could be deployed anywhere in the world with a minimum of mobilization and personnel involved.
You can design new transportation systems that are delivering better service than today if you adopt autonomy.
Jotun is at the forefront of search and rescue technology. We launched the world's first marine emergency radio beacon in Norway in 1970 and have continued to push boundaries and develop new solutions to ensure that no one is ever lost at sea.
Conventional supply chain practices are inefficient, as parts can circulate the world multiple times, from point of manufacture to vessel operation. And additive manufacturing changes this equation to a decentralized manufacturing model, with parts being fabricated on demand, close to the point of need.
For more than 25 years, we at Duolog have consistently challenged the limits of technology in maritime IT. Today, we offer a suite of services ranging from maritime email, smart internet management, to cybersecurity and data transfer services, and more to come.
There is something called co-opetition, which is both competition and cooperation in one. And this is what we need to have in Norway now.
The Norwegian Business Association in Singapore welcome you to the opening discussion at Ocean Now 2021. In conjunction with Norway Shipping, Asian Action partnering with Singapore to reach decarbonization goal is organized in collaboration with the Norwegian Embassy in Singapore, Innovation Norway, and Singapore-Norway Chamber of Commerce. We thank Norway Shipping for the opportunity and look forward to continue working with Norway Shipping organizer long-term, as the presence of Norwegian-owned shipping and maritime-related companies is very strong in Singapore, and Singapore's position as a maritime center will further be strengthened during the years ahead. In the spirit of cooperation and action, we invite both the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore and Norway Shipping to be partners for Singapore-Norway Innovation Conference in October, where we will continue to explore the business opportunities within decarbonization. Singapore and Norway are ocean partners, and we will, in today's discussion, uncover how the industry, by partnering with Singapore, can reach decarbonization goals. It's now time for action. The industry leaders taking part in today's discussion are committed to decarbonization and have, within their respective organizations, put in place strategies to drive the change fast forward. All of us that live in Singapore see and appreciate the ambitious drive from the authorities and MPA to further strengthen Singapore's position as the global maritime hub and where decarbonization have core focus. It's now time for the entire industry globally to put decarbonization action in motion. Singapore and Norway, as ocean partners, are well positioned to take the global lead and showcase in real terms how this should be done. Let me bring reference to a few words of wisdom from Gandhi. A man is the sum of his action, of what he has done, of what he can do, nothing else. And with those words, let me welcome to the stage Norway's ambassador to Singapore, Her Excellency Anita Negård.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you to the Norwegian Business Association in Singapore and to Norshipping for this opportunity. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to this discussion on decarbonization of the maritime industry. Both Singapore and Norway acknowledge the fundamental challenge climate change poses to human life. We are committed to the Paris Agreement and to the related IMO regulations, strategies and action plans for the maritime industry. As ocean partners, we cooperate internationally to help shape the global framework for the industry, and we collaborate bilaterally on a range of programs, innovation projects and pilots. We push the boundaries by leveraging knowledge and technology, combined with our in-depth understanding of the global maritime industry. The vibrant Norwegian maritime cluster here in Singapore, with its links back to Norway and focus on all of Asia, is part of this effort. We see the cooperation among our companies, universities, and research institutions grow year by year. We can't be complacent or content, however, with what we have achieved so far. There is no time to lose. Action is needed. I therefore look forward to hearing from our outstanding panel this morning what their priorities for actions are. We will not leave it there. Team Norway and Singapore will continue to bring leading voices from Europe and Asia to the table, including during the Singapore-Norway Innovation Conference this autumn, so stay tuned. With this, I leave the floor to Mr. Paul Kastman, Director of Innovation Norway in Singapore. Thank you.
I'd like to thank my fellow Team Norway representatives, Her Excellency Anita Negård and the President of Embas, Leonard Stornes, for their opening remarks, and extend my gratitude to the organizers of Norshipping for inviting us as contributors to this year's event and to kickstart the Ocean Now conference. Decarbonizing the maritime industry is an important pillar in Norway's ocean partnership with Singapore, a partnership that stretches back to the mid-19th century and covers engagements on both the government, business, and research levels. About a month ago, Team Norway organized a special Insights panel in conjunction with the Singapore Maritime Week, where we discussed clean fuel technologies for short and deep sea shipping with the MPA and several maritime companies. The event highlighted some of the collaboration that we are seeing in the area of maritime decarbonization between Singapore and Norway. One such example is the partnership between Yinson and Lift Ocean to develop the Hydroglider, an all-electric harbour craft with hydrofoil technology that can help decarbonize Singapore's short sea shipping. Another example is the Castor initiative, where the MPA, Yara and others have teamed up to develop an ammonia-fueled tanker, and the Topeka project led by the Wilhelmsen Group, which is developing a hydrogen-fueled vessel for deployment in Norway and Singapore. During Singapore Maritime Week, the MPA also announced that it will set up a maritime decarbonization center in partnership with BW Group, DNV, Semco Marine and others to support research and technology development. The center was one of 9 recommendations submitted by the International Advisory Panel on Maritime Decarbonization to support decarbonization in the maritime industry. Finally, I'd like to mention the renewal of the research agreement between Singapore Maritime Institute and the Norwegian Research Council, which will, amongst other things, fund joint research projects on maritime decarbonization. The agreement was originally signed in 2000 between the MPA and the Norwegian Research Council and has been renewed 8 times. Looking forward, we will continue to strengthen our engagement with Singapore in the area of decarbonization, and it's a topic we will revisit on several occasions in 2021, such as the Singapore-Norway Innovation Conference in October and Norway-Singapore Science Week in November. Today, we will hear from some of the key stakeholders leading this development, how decarbonization is defining their organization's strategies, and how we can deepen the collaboration between Singapore and Norway in this field. And with that, I would like to introduce Espen Paulsen, the chair of the International Chamber of Shipping, who will pilot us through today's panel. Thank you.
Good morning, Norway. Good afternoon, Singapore. And firstly, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers, Norwegian Business Association of Singapore, as well as their partners, the Norwegian Embassy and Innovation Norway, for inviting me to moderate this session entitled Asian Action, Partnering with Singapore to Reach Decarbonization Goals, the first virtual session of Ocean Now, part of Norshipping. By way of a short background, in July 2020, the Singapore Maritime Foundation, with the support of the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, established an international advisory panel, or IAP, co-chaired by Andreas Hilman-Pau and Wong Weng-Seng, and comprising some 30 experts from Singapore and around the world. The vision of the IAP was to shape greenhouse gas measures, set technical standards, pilot innovations, build selective infrastructure, deploy incentives at national, regional, and global level, and connect global stakeholders in sharing knowledge and implement actions. The report was released during Singapore Maritime Week in April and identified 4 strategic objectives and 9 pathways towards decarbonization of the maritime sector. And given that one of the words of the headline of the report is the word action, I believe it provides the perfect background and setting for this session, not least as we have the co-chair, Andreas Hilman-Pau, on the panel, along with the CEO of the sponsor, so to speak, Kwai Lei Hun of the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore. Let me now introduce the panelists. As I say, Kwai Lei Hun is CEO of the MPA and is well known to many of you as a passionate and tireless advocate of decarbonization and technological innovation. She works strenuously on behalf of the Maritime Singapore cluster in the pursuit of these endeavors. Andreas Hilman-Pau is a high-profile and highly respected chairman of the BW Group that encompasses a fleet of more than 400 ships operating in most segments of the industry, including LNG, LPG, offshore, product tankers, and dry bulk, and including, more recently, a major investment in windmill installation vessels, amongst other sustainability-related investments. Remy Eriksson is Group President and CEO of De Norske Veritas, one of the leading international classification societies, a post he has held since 2015. He is well known for leading DNV's dynamic approach to innovation and the route towards decarbonization. And finally, Thomas Wilhelmsen is CEO of the diversified group bearing his name, with roots going back to its establishment in 1861. The group is now a global maritime services entity, providing more than half the world fleet with essential products, along with agency services, ship management, and related maritime services. The group is also very active in renewables and in the offshore and energy segments, operating in some 70 countries. I would now like to address a question to each panelist and invite them to respond in around 3 to 4 minutes. So if I may start with Lei Hun. Lei Hun, could you tell us a bit about the background of the decision by the MPA and Singapore Maritime Foundation to form the International Advisory Panel, and give us some of Singapore government's perspectives and key takeaways from this study? And which of the 4 strategic goals, harmonize standards, implementing new solutions, finance projects, and collaborate with partners, and which of the 9 pathways do you believe should be prioritized from a Singapore government and Maritime Singapore perspective? It is a given that all are important, but the audience would find your response interesting, not least in terms of the word action. Lei Hun, please.
Thanks so much, Esben, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this panel. I may not take 3 to 4 minutes, but to answer your first question, Esben, I have to go back to 2019. That is in November 2019, when we were having a discussion on the work plan that we need to put in place for Maritime Singapore in Maritime Port Authority of Singapore, in MPA, within my team. And we decided that there were 3 strategic directions we need to move Maritime Singapore towards. The first, disruption. Although then we were thinking of IMO 2020 0.5%, we weren't thinking about the pandemic. Second, we were thinking about decarbonization, and the third, digitalization. So on the 4th quarter of 2019, when we were having this conversation with our Ministry of Transport, and then a former Senior Minister of State, Dr. Lam Pin Min, talked about the need to bring in international players, people with technical expertise and people who have strong links with the industry to come on board to actually work out the agenda for us in terms of the decarbonization and where Maritime Singapore could chip in and help to nudge the process forward. And with that, the idea of the International Advisory Panel was given birth. And when we were looking around in terms of the people that we need to invite on, the first we have in mind is, of course, Andres, because he was our chairman of our IMC 2030, International Maritime Centre 2030. And we were very glad that he decided and he agreed to come on board with us. On the other hand, we wanted to find another co-chair, Mr. Wong Wing San, because of his background and his experience in the shipyard side. And we thought industry, shipyard, bring 2 co-chairs together and bring together 30 very class C-suite of industry leaders. It will help us nudge the process forward. So that's how the origin of the IAP came about. So we took about a few months, and from there we were glad that SMF decided to take on board the idea, and MPA gave SMF the full support. So I take the opportunity here to thank and give our appreciation to the 2 co-chairs, as well as to our panel of 30 members who have come on board and given us this very precious list of recommendations. Of course, if you ask me, among the 4 strategic goals that we have in the IAP report, I have to say all are equally important, because about harmonizing standard, that's what we do in MPA. That's what we can contribute as a member state of IMO. How do we work with the various industry players to move forward on safety standards, bunkering standards, etc. So it is our rice bowl, and we need to do it well, and we know that we can get like-minded partners together to move forward on that. Second, in terms of implementing solution, personally, that's my favorite, because I really like to put in place solutions. And I think what we need now for decarbonization is really, what is the solution? What is the commercially viable solution in play? And therefore, we need to implement solutions together. Thirdly, in terms of financing projects, it is inevitable. Of course, we could come up with seed funding and money, and thanks together with our founding members of the Decarb Centre, together with MPA, we are able to put through a sum of money, but it is by no means the and only solution. It's probably a first trigger point to nudge, and we will need more fundings to come in place. How do we put in place a financial structure with financial institutions who want to come on board this very meaningful journey? I think that is something which the Decarb Centre needs to work on. And lastly, about collaborating with partners, and that definitely we need to collaborate with partners to implement solutions. So if you ask me, Esben, all 4 are equally important, but if you ask me for the next few years, what we need is to implement solutions to come up with commercially viable solutions.
Great, thank you very much, Lê Hun. Very interesting. Andreas, initially wearing your Singapore Maritime Foundation IAP co-chair hats, well, sorry, you're chairman of SMF, but co-chair of IAP. Please give us some general comments about the IAP study and pinpoint any of the specifics that you feel should be highlighted. And please share what your view would be the key takeaway from the study, again, against the background of the 4 main strategic goals and the 9 pathways, and which of these you believe will be the first to bear fruit, in other words, resulting in action.
So both of you have referenced action being at the heart of the IAP, and how these other pieces support it, whether it's harmonizing standards or financing and collaboration. I think it's very exciting to see that as part of the work we had over a dozen initiatives, 15 to be precise, that are already underway. So these are real collaborations, real initiatives that are taking place as we speak. In terms of picking which of them are going to bear fruit first or which are going to be successful, it's a very dangerous exercise to try to pick winners amongst all these or offend people by picking winners. I think for me, to reference two, one is just-in-time arrivals. Because you can argue about whether ammonia project is going to be better or this hydrogen project will be better or whatever. Well, they may all be good for different applications. But I think just in time is what I see as somewhat low-hanging fruit, complex but low-hanging fruit, because if we can slow ships down, it's generally recognized that we burn less fuel, we have less emissions, and we don't have to sacrifice efficiency because it can all be part of a schedule and it can be timed. So I think that's a particularly exciting project. The other one that was referenced is the Decarbonization Center, because if you want to have lasting progress and change, it's important to have a nexus that can serve as a place for people to come together, to convene ideas, to act as a catalyst. And so I think the center is a very important one, which is now well underway as well.
Thank you, Andreas. We turn now to Remy. Remy, I'd like you to comment specifically on DNV's engagement in decarbonization, especially at your Singapore facility, and whether you believe that a meaningful level of cooperation can occur with other similar organizations and institutions, such as, for example, the Maersk McKinney Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, and not least the proposed Maritime Decarbonization Center Innovation Hub here in Singapore, backed by the MPA and 6 major owners. Remy, please. Sorry,
thank you.
Remy.
Thank you, Espen.
Second part of the question. Class societies are devoting enormous amounts of resources to R&D in respect of tomorrow's fuels. Reaching carbon-neutral propulsion systems for shipping is, in effect, a race. But do you believe, in general terms, that cooperation and collaboration among so many, in effect, competing interests is possible? Remy, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So on your first part of the question, we work on decarbonization through basically 4 platforms in Singapore. First is, of course, supporting ship owners and charters related to the decarbonization question through our advisory and classification services. And that's related to the upcoming ESG requirements and also new regulations such as EEXI and also carbon intensity index. And here it's about what are the options and what are the different pathways into the future. And I will get back to that when I talk about your second element of your question here, Paul. Espen. So initiating, the second one is to initiate and take part in joint industry projects. And one recent one is to develop a recommended practice and a guideline document for remote audits, remote surveys, and remote inspections. And the third platform is related to the foresight studies that we provide, and also webinars. And one of the foresight studies is the Energy Transition Outlook. And we recently had a Singapore Energy Transition Conference. And also there has been webinars on ammonia and also on hydrogen recently. And the fourth platform is related to the new Maritime Decarbonization Center that we are one of the founding partners, and we are very much looking forward to contribute with expertise through that center. Then when it comes to competing forces and how to deal with that, I think we cannot solve it with thinking too much competition here. And we have some experience from different initiatives around the world, and we see great progress when different players come together, not only within the maritime industry, but also sectors that are important to actually decarbonize the maritime sector. We have one initiative in Norway called the Green Shipping Program, and we also been engaged in something called the Washington State Maritime Blue Initiative, which is also looking at how to decarbonize shipping. So I think we cannot afford to see each other as competitors. We have to look at what is the job to be done and how can we all support that.
Can I break your flow and speak out of turn on this point about collaboration? Because, I mean, I think it's such an important concept, and in fact, it's one of the 4 pillars that we came up with in the IEP report, referencing back to that, because this problem is bigger than any one party can solve on their own. The only thing I would say is we shouldn't overplay collaboration and trying to do everything together, because there are some topics that you absolutely should do together. Like if you're trying to invent the standard charging socket for electric vehicles, you should do it together. If you're trying to come up with safety standards, you should do it together. If you want to find the next or the right metrics for the industry to measure itself against, emissions metrics, you should do it together. But can you imagine if we forced everybody into one room to come up with one vaccine, or to invent one type of car, or to come up with one type of fuel? The world would be much poorer for it. And actually, I think we should encourage sort of the 100 flowers and lots of initiatives, even competing initiatives, when it can get us faster to our goal. So collaborate on some things and let 100 flowers bloom on the others.
A good old Mao saying. But yes, I think the nuts and bolts of what you're talking about, that is really the obvious area for collaboration, whereas the blue sky thinking is the other. But thank you for your intervention, Andreas. So now we come to Thomas. The group bearing your name is highly diverse, as I said in my introduction, but a common theme is a strong commitment to and interest in decarbonization and reducing the carbon footprint thereof. Your group is developing a 7,000 unit wind-powered RoRo. It's just one example of numerous projects that are underway in the renewable space, be it wind, fuel cell projects, and so on. And with a significant presence in Singapore, how do you view the IAP? And as with Remy, do you believe it is realistic, too ambitious, or not ambitious enough? Thomas, please.
Thank you, Espen, and nice being here. And yeah, no, definitely. I think it's ambitious, but first of all, I think I would just start saying that we've had significant presence in Singapore for decades, and it's a fantastic place to be. It's a place where you feel, say, the drive for innovation and professionalism, which is a nice starting point for many industries. And for the maritime industries, I think we feel, say, that honest feeling that the maritime industry actually matters. When it comes to the IAP, yes, I do think it's realistic. There are 9, in my way, good pathways. And of course, they are ambitious, but at the same time, we're in a situation now in the world with decarbonization, which requires, in a way, a common effort. I agree with Andreas. We should not collaborate on everything, but there are certain things we can collaborate on. And I think action and collaborations are 2 very nice key words. And for this initiative in itself, I think it's a great way of actually utilizing the hub that you have in Singapore to develop both companies, but also Singapore as a maritime, say, cluster. But all in all, what I believe we are trying to achieve is to gain experience, solutions which will be better for the maritime industry, but also for the world at large. And we all want to be part of a winning team.
Thank you, Thomas. Very well put. And indeed, we do all want to be part of a winning team. And I think between Norway and Singapore, there is a huge amount of initiatives underway and collaboration and cooperation commercially and in research and R&D and so forth. And it's very heartening to see, because I think both nations clearly have got the bit between their teeth in respect to this extremely and critical issue. But Andreas, if I could just turn back to you for a second and ask you, we're focused so far mainly on your role in the IAP, but stepping away from that, in your day-to-day life as a major ship owner involved, as I said in my introduction, in pretty well every segment or most segments of the industry, you obviously are looking at through a commercial eye as to what you can do, both the here and now, short, medium term, and the long term. And could you sort of share with us some of the, without giving inner secrets away, share with us some of what you are prioritizing in your own mind?
So I'm not sure there are any secrets. I can tell you that it's difficult, because we have this mission statement, which is delivering energy for the world today and finding solutions for tomorrow. And we're trying to walk this tightrope between not abandoning all the good stuff that we're doing now and all the capabilities we have and have built up over a long period of time, but also not burying our heads in the sand and saying, oh, it's all going to be okay and we don't need to do anything. That tightrope is a difficult one to walk because you have to think hard, which areas can I go into where I have any right to play or right to win? We could go into, well, you can name, any new area you care to mention where we have no capabilities and we'll just be fumbling around in these areas. The other question is, how do you scale it? Because when you move out from your core business, if you scale it too big, you don't know what questions to ask, you don't know what risks you're taking, you can easily fall over and make some bad mistakes. So what we're doing is branching out in a number of different directions. As Thomas is in his business, we're not just looking, we're investing in wind, 2 different wind companies. We've built up a solar team, which has built a huge pipeline of solar projects, particularly in North America. We're doing biogas. We have a battery company. So we're moving in lots of different directions, and we're trying to scale it appropriately so that some of them will grow into something successful and help the world in the process.
Thank you, Andreas. Could I put that same question to Thomas? Admittedly, you're coming from a slightly different angle because a lot of your business is services related, but nonetheless, the same question, sort of the real life in the business world, so to speak.
In fact, Espen, if I could add on from a port... Now, I just wanted to add, Thomas, that from a port authority perspective, I'm actually very keen to know, for your next build, what type of ship will you be building?
It's a good question, and I'm not sure if I can actually answer you. And unfortunately, I don't have any real secrets either. But I think we're up for significant changes that we have not seen to the same extent for quite some time. I doubt that we will have, say, the solution. But as with Andreas, we are, say, testing and investing in different areas, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's other type of solutions. We're not sure what is going to be the real or if there will be a solution. It probably will be several depending on local, regional, international trade. But at least we need to try it out, and we are lucky in terms of we have a system that we can draw upon. We have partners we can draw upon. We can collaborate with others in terms of trying and trialing out and doing the testing, and hopefully through that and smart investments will be a party to contributing towards decarbonization.
Thank you, Thomas. Remy, would you like to add anything on this from your point of view, and perhaps stick your neck out a little bit and tell us who you believe in DNV are the front runners in this?
Well, thank you. Our vision is to be a trusted voice to tackle global transformation. So many years ago, we started this journey to look into alternative fuels, and we soon saw that we need to understand more about the whole energy transition. How is the world energy system transforming? and we started to build up competency already in the 1990s and during 2000. And we now have a business that is equally sized as our maritime business, working with renewables. So solar and wind, battery, power grids, and oil and gas, which we have been in for more than that, so a longer period than that. So I think it's important to understand the bigger picture, and not only the maritime, how to decarbonize maritime, because I think maritime cannot do it alone. And that's partly related to how things are, the governance. IMO regulate sea, and there are other players that are needed in order to reach the ambitions of IMO. So I think that's why I think collaboration is important, but not only for the sake of collaboration, but to solve some of these, I would say, deadlock points that we now have in front of us. So who provides the fuel, at which costs, where, and what technologies do we put on board, and how do we operate the ship? So there are so many interconnecting points between different industries, and that's where we want to contribute also as one of the funding partners of Maritime Decarbonization Center, to see the transformation of shipping in the context of the whole energy system transformation.
And by the way, you know, I think that's such an interesting point Remy's making about cross-industry, because I think a lot of people forget sometimes that you know, carbon emissions, 18% comes from agriculture and forestry, 18% or so comes from buildings. There are different statistics, but that's sort of order of magnitude what we're talking about. Shipping is 2%, which is not to say that we don't have a problem to fix. We have to fix our own problem. But it's these crossovers where one can find new fuels that apply to powering buildings or powering industry. And then you're not just solving the 2% shipping problem, but you're solving others. And we should try to see that as an opportunity to contribute to that. I mean, the marine space also can contribute in other ways, sustainable protein, you know, algae, which apparently if you mix it in with the feed, it stops the cows emitting so much methane. You know, there are many ways in which we can contribute beyond shipping from the marine and maritime side.
If I could also just build on this point, I mean, shipping is not alone, because like what Remy and Andrea said, we are actually in the energy transition. So when it comes to say bunkering, when it comes to infrastructure or even port, it's something that we need to work together, not just among the port authorities, but also with your energy authorities. And that's something I think within Singapore, among the government agencies, we are also looking and studying together. If indeed it is a hydrogen vessel that's coming in, right? How do we ensure that we have the standards as well as we have the infrastructure to be able to fuel a vessel that's in hydrogen? And similarly, for example, ammonia seems to be quite, I would say, hip now. There are quite a number of projects going on, and MP is involved in them as well. We are actually prepared to try to see whether we can actually fuel the first ammonia ship, let's say under the Castor initiative, say in 2 to 3 years' time. So I think it's something, it's really a bigger overall strategic picture, energy transformation, together with the maritime side. And on top of that, I would say on the digitalization side, it is actually about the whole global supply chain, how we can make it more efficient and digitalize the whole supply chain. So there are a lot of efforts going on, and I think it's worthwhile to collaborate with as many sectors as possible. And within the sector, of course, we should compete, but we compete to have common standards and collaborate on that. Yeah.
Exactly. The common standards is a theme that comes through time and again. If we could now, we still have some reasonable amount of time. I'd like to maybe just switch the subject slightly on something I spoke with Andreas about just before we began, and something which I know a lot of people are, and I've had this question put to myself many a time. This is a question of IMO and IMO regulation, and the simple question is the IMO going too slowly or going too fast, or is it, what do we think about it? Andreas, if you could start off.
So I think the easy point of view, the easy answer on this is, you know, for me to say IMO is going too slowly, or to say, you know, we're going to be net zero by 2050 and everybody has to be net zero by 2050 and come out with these kind of statements. I should start by saying I think aspirations are incredibly useful and incredibly powerful. We should have aspirations. My fear is that aspirations can sometimes become words that we hide behind, and it takes us away from actions. We spend so much energy trying to hammer stronger aspiration statements that we forget that actually it's the actions that matter. So Greta Thunberg, she talks about empty promises, empty words. She says, all these nations made proclamations in Paris 5 years ago, and we're not making adequate progress against those promises. So they're empty promises, empty commitments. What IMO has said is that it wants to reduce total carbon emissions by 50% by 2050, and with urgency to achieve zero emissions as soon as possible. If you imagine that world trade doubles to 2050, which is likely from 2008 to 2050, then that's a 75% reduction of emissions. Maybe not enough, and we should go for the zero, but I think let's get the actions going rather than spending all our time talking about what's this aspiration. It should be 100% reduction, not 75% reduction. Let's just get the journey on the road. The other thing that I think is important to bear in mind is I can make any proclamations, aspiration statements I want as an individual. And if you're a leader of a company, you can make a statement on behalf of your company. And if you're a leader of a country, you can maybe make a statement on behalf of your country. IMO is 190 countries, and there is no person in IMO or anywhere else who can make a proclamation on behalf of those 190 countries until enough of them ratify that movement. And so, again, I think we just have to be realistic that we're asking the entire planet and all countries of the world to commit to something. We have a basis, let's get moving on the basis we have.
No, I certainly think you're absolutely right that aspirational statements are frequent and numerous, and you see them time and again, and it's almost a competition in itself who can make the most far-reaching statement. But as the key word of this session is about its action, and that is what everybody, shipping people are very pragmatic, and action is what it's about. And I often use the analogy where you say, you look at the vaccine, who would have thought that in 12 months a vaccine could be developed? That's private enterprise. I mean, never underestimate the power of private enterprise. But could Thomas and then Remy just add a few words on this issue of IMO?
Sure, and I think it's been pointed out already, but the maritime value chain is complex. As a pure fact, it's completely international. So to find a common framework is difficult to do. But I think one thing which is quite important is to keep in mind that today, for many, not all, but for many industry players, this is something that we want to achieve. It's not just something that we have to achieve because of law. There are policies that are coming into play, etc. But most of us, or many of us at least, we want to achieve this, and we want to be on this pathway. So that, I think that's the most important ingredient that we can have in this journey where we are today. And there are so many other influencing factors which will steer us in that direction. You see, the financial markets today is extremely hard to attract capital unless you are on a positive pathway. It's extremely hard to attract the right employees, the competence, etc. So there are a lot of factors coming into play here, which I think will positively influence this fantastic industry on this journey. And we have to also keep in mind that transportation through the maritime or the seaways is one of the most important or most efficient ways of transporting goods still. So if we can bear that in mind as well, I think that's an important thing for us.
Thank you, Thomas. Remy?
Yeah, I think it's great that we have IMO and that we have agreed on a certain ambition. Whether that ambition is bold enough or sufficient enough, I don't think that's the important thing right now. The important thing right now is to move towards that ambition and start to act on that. And I'm afraid to have talk too much about ambitions and goals is that the great could become the enemy of the good. And I think there are so many things we can do today that will bring us along that pathway towards 50 or 75 or net zero. So that ambition might be revised in 5-10 years from now, but that's not important. The important thing is it is a flag that is put out in the future, and we are not close to get to that flag. And we should start at least activities to move towards that. And I think there are so many things the industry can do right now to contribute in going down the alley of lowering the emissions.
I'd love to hear Lê Hoon's perspective on this too, because whenever I have conversations here in Singapore with government, you know, the message seems to be when we make a commitment, we stick by it. And therefore, we will be very thoughtful about the commitments we make because they mean something. And so to my earlier comment, one can throw out these aspiration statements as a means of making people think you're a good guy and leaving you alone and then go to the next person that they can go and beat up on. And, you know, I think it becomes almost like an excuse to make people go away as you throw out some statement for 30 years out into the future. But I'd be interested to hear, you know, government's perspective.
But can I sort of interrupt, because it's part of the question that I have for Lê Hoon, because it ties in perfectly, and you, I think you are aware of this question.
I represent one member state of the 190 member states of IMO.
But what with the highest number of votes to the IMO Council, right?
Groups.
One of them. Okay, Lê Hoon, there was a recent conference which you were at, and a very well-known Norwegian shipping personality, Lasse Christoffersen, who is also actually a vice chairman of the ICS and a very active member of the ICS, I must say. He posed a question, but you ran out of time, so I have the question, and I'm going to put it to you, and I'll read it out. I think Singapore will continue to strive as a shipping hub. You've done a great job so far, and you will do so in the future. The cooperation between private sector and public is next to nothing in the world. Where we would like to see more of you and where we need your leadership is on the global scene on these new regulations. I would love to see Singapore say we need to get to zero by 2050. The current IMO strategy will not be enough and will not deliver what the public requires from us. It is not up to shipping to decide whether we have zero shipping in 2050 or not. It will happen. The only problem is that we will realize in the 2030s, and then a lot of money would have been wasted. Secondly, is that Singapore is really the bridge between East and West in the world as I see it, and we really need your support to drum up aggressive regulations around carbon in Asia. Europe is now coming along, even Southern Europe, who was initially less supportive on this, are now progressive, as we've seen in recent statements. The US came out yesterday, very clear. And now it's Asia's turn, and I challenge Singapore to take a leadership role on this. Be vocal, be clear. We all need to work towards zero in 2050. So, Lê Hoon, there you have it. And this time we're not going to run out of time.
And I'm sure I have one chairman of SMF and a former chairman as well to help me on that. And you are on my board of MPA, right? Anyway, back to Andrea's point first, and then I'll go to last question. IMO indeed is more than 100, nearly 200 member states. So in a way, when they came up with this target of 2050 or 50% reduction, in a way it is an achievement. And I would say that it has served as a reference point, not just for IMO itself, but as well as for the shipping companies to work towards. Having said that, it is a multilateral organization, just like WTO, etc. And when you have an organization with set target, it has to also look at what are some of the steps it needs to work towards to achieve this target. First, I think it has achieved what it needed, which is there is actually increasing momentum looking at this target, and you have companies who are asking themselves, can we move faster than this target? Itself, I thought, is an achievement. Whoever is faster should move faster forward. Secondly, it is, after all, a global challenge. You do need global consensus on it. And as far as possible, I think among the member states, there is a commitment towards that. And where Singapore comes in together with like-minded member states is to actually now put in place, like what you mentioned, the action. What are the steps that's needed to meet 2050? And at the same time, what we do is to work with like-minded companies and like-minded partners and stakeholders to move faster ahead. For example, setting up of the Decarb Center. Singapore itself, we have set up a Singapore Green Plan. We have also put in place a carbon tax and are looking at gradually improving on it along the way. We are interested in looking at carbon mechanism, and we are working together with like-minded economists again in the IMO to look at different steps. So I would say that we should look at targets of international organization as a reference point. It is a target already for member states, and I would say that for stakeholders or partners who are able to move faster, they should move faster. And you have countries who are able to move together with you on that, and we should just rip on this momentum and build it forward. I think it's just like any technology. The beginning is always very steep because in a way the technology is not there yet. So you need a few like-minded and people who are willing to move ahead, what I call the pathfinder, the first movers, to come up with at least some commercially viable type of solutions, and then you will see that it will go exponential. It's like PV cells, it's the same thing, right, for solar cells. So I'm hoping that together we could actually achieve that technological breakthrough first, regulatory breakthrough, then I think the momentum will kickstart very fast. I hope I answered your question.
Please, yes, please, Thomas. Yeah.
Industry. Yes, we might complain about, say, lack of ambitious targets or the ability to enforce these targets at this point in time. But with the current momentum, I'm not too afraid. I actually think this industry and all the players in it, we will reach this. It's just going to happen, because the momentum is picking up and it will be exponential as soon as technologies and solutions are in place. But now we're walking a little bit in the dark, trying to find the silver lining or the silver bullet. But there will be several solutions, and with solutions there will be, say, firmer targets, and we can move on as an industry.
I'll give a concrete example of this. When IMO came out with EEXI some months back, NGOs were up in arms. People were saying, this isn't enough, this is pathetic, they should be doing so much more. Every boardroom I'm sitting in now is calculating ship by ship, fleet by fleet, how they're going to perform against EEXI. It's only kicking in 1st of January 2023, but people already calculating, making adjustments, making changes, and sometimes you start a new tweak and you don't see the outcome the next week. It takes a year or two, but the machinery starts to move, and I think we have to give it. I know we're all in sort of a huge sense of urgency about climate change, including myself, but one has to let that machinery kick into gear, to borrow the concept you referred to.
I mean, EEXI is I'll just, 1 second, Remy, I'll come to you. EEXI is, an ICS, I remember at the time, the NGOs were up in arms and most ship owners were up in arms, and our technical director in ICS said, we've got it just about right.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, sorry. So Remy, please.
Yeah, no, I subscribe to this, that there's a lot of things happening, and over the past 18 months there has been big changes on EEXI, as Andreas mentioned, but also about the carbon intensity index. So a lot is happening, and also a lot of things are happening when it comes to the order book. If we look at the order book change over the past 12 to 18 months, we now see that more than 20% of orders are with alternative fuels. If you go before that, it was almost insignificant. So something happened last year, and that something is alternative fuels. So we see a significant shift during 2020, during the COVID-19 year, and we see this is also continuing into this year. Although the new building ordering is low, there has been a significant change over the past 18 months.
Thank you, Remy. Andreas, anything to add on this particular subject, or?
No, I mean, I think, you know, we as I mentioned, we're going to see a lot of progress from lots of different angles, and I'm excited by how the industry is aggressively tackling it. You know, one won't see every last company, and you know, these multilateral organizations may move a little bit more slowly, but everywhere I look, I see people trialing new things and making progress. So.
Well, I often quote you in 2019 at the Global Maritime Forum here in Singapore. You were trying to persuade some Southern European, if I can put it that way, owners about the change of direction, and your words were, the train, if it hasn't left the station, it is leaving, and we must be on it. And I think this was a very persuasive comment to make, because history has shown subsequently that many of those who were doubters have come around.
And I must add that I'm actually very impressed very heartened, you know, by the resilience of this industry. I mean, look at for the past 2 years, during a pandemic, while we are all busy, you know, with crew changes, with port authorities, with balancing between public health as well as efficiency of the port and efficiency and keeping the global supply chain going. We are, you know, really, you can see the momentum of digitalization and decarbonization going at a very fast speed. So I would say that for all we say, before I joined the industry, I was told shipping is always a few steps behind. I can see the pace really, you know, accelerating in these past 2 years, and it's very heartening. It's very heartening. So hopefully, you know, with our like-minded partners, you know, together with, of course, Lars, you know, we hope to move together forward. Yeah.
Well, when we have people like you with your energy and enthusiasm, Lei Hun, at you know, at the regulatory level, I think it's a great thing. And you've come from outside the industry, and your learning curve was, I would guess, pretty steep. But you certainly managed and made quite an imprint in that very short period of time, and that's absolutely brilliant. I've been in shipping a bit longer than you, and I would agree that this is a very, very resilient industry that has done a fantastic job. I mean, when I started, which I'm embarrassed to say was 50 years ago on the 31st of August this year, you know, washing crude oil out of just opening the tanks when you're at sea was perfectly normal. I mean, it seems almost unbelievable today, but you know, that's extreme, but the progress has been absolutely tremendous, and we are indeed a very resilient industry, as you say, as we've shown. We have, I believe, 3 or 4 minutes left, so I would like to open the floor. Tom, anything to add?
I'm sure we could sit there and we can talk for hours on this topic, and but it's exciting times, and I think we just need to make the most out of it. And I'm sure that when we look back in 10 years' time, we will see a fantastic journey by this industry. A challenge that we have, of course, is that we have capital goods which are built to last for 25-30 years. And it's phasing out of that capacity in a prudent and in a prudent way is, of course, a challenge for us as an industry. But I'm absolutely convinced that we will look back at say 2020 to 2030 as defining period in the maritime industry in changing.
Thank you, Tom. Remy?
Yeah, I think what we have in front of us is the decade of action. I think we are seeing momentum building up. The flywheel is starting to turn faster and faster, and that will bring this industry forward. I'm cautiously optimistic in terms of the future. I see so many good things have happened over the past 18 months, as I said. So I'm cautiously optimistic. And think this decade in front of us will be a defining one.
Thank you. Andreas?
Really optimistic, Remy.
Very optimistic, Remy.
Andreas, any last words?
No further comments.
No further comment. Lei Hun?
Yeah.
I just know that the shipping is very important for the global supply chain, so we are here to change, transform, go green and go digital and go tech.
Thank you, Lê Hun. Well, I would like to sincerely thank Tom, Remy, Andreas, Lê Hun for a very interesting session. I hope that our friends in Norway will be interested to hear what we've done here and what we're doing here, as we in turn are very interested in following what they're doing, because Norway is looked upon as a genuine innovator in so many areas of shipping that I'm sure we can learn from them, and hopefully they can learn something from us. So thank you very much to the four of you. And one last word is that Erik Borgen, chairman of the Singapore Norway Chamber of Commerce, who is a very well-known person to us and an old friend of Singapore, I must say, has an announcement to make in conjunction with MPA, I believe, or relates to MPA, so he will be following on from here. So, but all the best, and thank you very much to the organizers once again for a very, very interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you, Espen, and thank you for a very inspiring panel debate. It's going to be very interesting to not least follow the work of this IIP in defining what concrete actions could be taken to support the maritime decarbonization. Now, representing the Singapore-Norway Chamber of Commerce, or the SNCC today, I want to make you all aware of an important event coming up during Norwshipping in January next year, and that is the Asia Podium Conference. For the third time now, we at the SNCC have the honor to cooperate with the Maritime Port Authority, or the MPA, of Singapore in arranging this Asia at Norwshipping conference. This will be an event where we will focus on shipping and maritime-related topics in the special context to recent developments within the industry in Southeast Asia and Asia as a whole. And with the MPA, we have on the previous events been very successful in gathering top expertise represented by senior executives and politicians to share their insights with us. The topics have been diverse, from how the use of new technology and digitalization has improved maritime operations and efficiency, to what the impact the maritime Silk Road in Asia has had and who the game changers are. Now, our plan for next year is to produce yet another timely and relevant program, and this is at a time where we are hopefully out of the worst of the ongoing pandemic, focusing on what smart actions the industry has had to take in order to stay in business and remain competitive and sustainable at the same time. So please make sure to attend this important milestone event, Asia at Norwshipping 2022. See you all there. Many thanks. On to you, Anders.
Thank you, Erik, and a big thanks to Espen and the brilliant panelists. This was a valuable contribution to Norwegian Business Association Singapore's objective to show the tangible business opportunities arising from decarbonization. And a very optimistic tone. As Thomas Willison pointed out, we are doing this not only because we have to, but because we want to. This is a very strong driver for action. This was also a kickstart for an even deeper and more comprehensive collaboration between Singapore and Norway on the pathways to decarbonization. As a patriot of both countries, I would love to see them take a joint global leadership on this vital topic. Thanks to our close allies in Team Norway here in Singapore, the Embassy and Innovation Norway. Also, Norwshipping for the opportunity, and as NBAS President Leonard Stornes said in his introduction, we look forward to continue working with the Norwshipping organizers. We invite you and MPA to be partners for Singapore Norway Innovation Conference in October. Finally, I'll thank our sponsor, Norwegian Cultural Center here in Singapore. As soon as the regulations allow, they will set up a famous Norwegian play called Karius and Baktus about two little toothed trolls who try to persuade their owner, Jens, not to brush his teeth. However, just like Jens' mother, or was it the dentist, takes action to end Karius and Baktus' days of white bread and syrup, we need to quickly take action to reduce the carbon picking on our planet. Today's discussion shows that the necessary action is actually being taken. Thanks to all watching us here at NBAS Studio, produced by Alta Production, and stay tuned to follow the upcoming Today Show.